Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chen and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had an excellent day yesterday upon reading the chapters where something great was revealed, and I'm just going to say it one more time because I have to. I knew it, that Jiang Yexue was a troublemaker from the start. If you know where that reference is from, you are awesome. All I did was switch the name, but I'm so excited. Okay, so anyway, yes, we're continuing with the reading of Remnants of Filth Volume 6, also known as Yu by Rou Bao or just Meatbun, and we're starting at chapter 172, so let's go ahead and get into it. Chapter 172. An accident of love brings an end to fate. After Murong Huang's death, Murong Chuyi grew sullen and silent. It became his custom to lock himself in his workshop, and the only person in all of Yue Manor who could find him was Jiang Yexue. During the mourning period, Murong Chuyi silently sculpted many clay figures, filled them with spiritual energy, and tinkered with them. He made them mimic Murong Huang's bearing and mannerisms, then enchanted them to walk around in his small courtyard. Jiang Yexue understood he was grieving and spoke little. He merely picked up the diagrams for the little clay people and followed the instructions himself. But Jiang Yexue didn't only make imitations of Murong Huang. Some of his clay figures resembled Murong Chuyi, and some himself. Some even looked like that newborn child named Chun-ching. Those clamoring clay figures crowded around the little courtyard, shouting and bustling, shattering the previously stifling atmosphere. Murong Chuyi looked at him gloomily. "What do you want? Are you here to pick a fight?" Jiang Yexue stepped over to him. He had the urge to take hold of his hands, but in the end, he only tugged on his sleeve. "Chuyi, you can't live in Aunt Huang's shadow forever." Murong Chuyi yanked his sleeve back. "I am not," he snapped. He turned, as if he didn't want to talk to Jiang Yexue anymore. He went to the mechanism bench, where lay all the scraps of clay left over from making the figures, and slowly closed his eyes. A gentle voice called out beside him. A hand was plucking at his sleeve, refusing to let go. Chuyi, I said I'm not. Can't you?" But he looked over and found that the speaker was not Jiang Yexue, but a little clay figure that looked just like him. It was trying, in its clumsy way, to cheer him up. Don't be sad. Don't be sad." Murong Chuyi stared. It'll be okay. After a beat, the rims of Murong Chuyi's eyes reddened. He turned to see Jiang Yexue standing beneath the wide eaves of the roof, framed by the leaden sky and petals falling like snow behind him. His robes, the creamy white of lotus root, fluttered in the wind. The two of them gazed at each other across the distance of the courtyard. Murong Chuyi tried to speak a few times, but all his words died on his lips. In the end, he managed a single, quiet, bitter sentence. "Your handiwork is hideous." Jiang Yexue burst into laughter, as if some invisible restraint on him had dissolved. He came back toward Murong Chuyi. After a moment's hesitation, he gave him a quick hug in consolation. "You're right," Jiang Yexue agreed. "Xiaoju, can you teach me how to improve?" Back then, their relationship had been very warm. Jiang Yexue could still curb his desire, and Murong Chuyi didn't push him away. Later, Jiang Yexue would often wonder, if he hadn't intervened in what followed, would everything have been different? In Huntian Cave, Jiang Yexue gripped Chun-ching by the neck. His touch was cool, recalling the hair-raising feeling of a snake's constricting coils. He leaned down, narrowing his eyes. "Chun-ching, did you know that if it weren't for me, you would have died at my mother's hands long ago?" Chun-ching shuddered. Jiang Yexue's brown eyes were too close to his face, seeming to flicker with scattered light and shadow from years past. Not long after Murong Huang's passing, Jiang Yexue fetched the little wooden toys Murong Chuyi had made for Chun-ching and went to play with the child. He knew the attitudes of many in the residence had changed toward him precisely by dint of Chun-ching's birth, yet he felt neither enmity nor malice toward the infant bundled in his swaddling clothes. Murong Chuyi, for his part, felt pity and compassion for the boy, but in order to keep up appearances, he never took the initiative to see him. He merely handed over his meticulously polished toys and sent them with Jiang Yexue. As time went on, Chun-ching's cradle filled with little wooden people, horses, fish, pointy-eared rabbits. Murong Chuyi's trinkets were scattered everywhere. Jiang Yexue looked at the wooden squirrel in his hand, sighing in amusement and exasperation. He really should make Murong Chuyi come take a look for himself, he thought. Little Chun-ching would be left without room to sleep if his uncle kept giving him presents like this. He mulled this over during the length of his walk there. Yet when he reached Chun-ching's room and pushed the door open, he heard a clunk and saw Chun-ching's wet nurse startle like a bird at the twang of a bow. She whipped around, knocking over a bowl of medicine that shattered on the ground. The liquid made ominous hissing noises as it splashed across the stone. Yeh-shoo-eh, she stammered. It took him but a moment to realize that within the bowl had been a fatal poison. Shocked and enraged, he grabbed the terrified wet nurse. What's going on? What are you doing? The wet nurse was a coward. Kowtowing and kneeling on the ground, she confessed that Madame Xie had pressured her to find an opportunity to feed Chun-ching poison. If she didn't do it, Madame Xie had threatened her entire family would die. Her account chilled Jiang Yexue to the bone. He refused to believe that his own mother would stoop to such cruelty for the sake of her own power. Dragging the wet nurse behind him, he went straight to Madame Xie, only for her to curse him out hysterically. What right do you have to criticize me? I'm clearing away obstacles for your future, you useless thing. You're always going on about righteousness and benevolence, but this world operates by the strong preying of the weak. You're just too naive to see it, Yeh-shoo-eh. How do you think I managed to make it this far? If you've never struggled down in the mud, you have no idea what it feels like to serve someone like a slave. Wait and see. In 20 years, no, it won't take 20 years. In 10 years, you'll understand that all the cool things I did were for you. This is Yue Manor, not some happy little family. His existence means your demise. Do you understand? Yexue, how did I give birth to such a spineless disgrace? Jiang Yexue was heartbroken and furious. Mom, that's still murder. How did you turn into this? That you can even ask such a question shows you have no idea how a noble clan works. Yeh-shoo-eh, you'll end up just like me. Wait and see. If you let that brat live, everything that should have come to you will go to him. By then... The woman's shrill laughter from that night so many years ago seemed to echo, hair raising like long nails scraping the bottom of a pot. You'll rue the day you stopped your mother. You'll regret it your whole life. You'll regret it your whole life. After this incident, this woman with eyes shot through with scarlet grew more unhinged by the day. In the end, she offended Yue Juntian himself, calling him a callous and heartless man in front of an audience. The consequences were exactly as expected. Yue Juntian had favored Madame Xie in the past because she was obsequious, gentle, and knew when to bend. She showed the kind of subservience a noble woman never would. Now that her softness had hardened to jealousy, there was nothing left for him to covet. Madame Xie fell from grace overnight. When her attendants saw that she'd repulsed Yue Juntian and would never return to favor, they scattered and left. Even her healer stopped treating her in earnest. Jiang Yexue saw all of this. As her son, he couldn't simply stand by and watch. He went to her bedside, intending to look for healers outside the residence to treat her. But the instant Madame Xie saw him, she began to scream, clawing at him and gnashing her teeth. She nearly stabbed his throat with a pair of scissors. She could no longer recognize her own son, nor heed his words. Madame Xie hung herself soon after. When the servants found her dangling from the rafter, she was dressed in her most exquisite finery. Her dark hair was spangled with her best jewels, her wrists and neck laden with glittering bracelets, necklaces, beaded chains, and gemstones. She had even donned the colorful pheasant robes only the Lord's first wife was permitted to wear, stolen from what Murong had left behind. Her suicide note was filled with absurd ravings, proclaiming that she was the mistress of this family, possessed of the highest rank and power. This woman's overweening ambitions painted a tragic yet utterly ridiculous picture. Whatever last vestiges of sympathy Yue Juntian had for her were destroyed by that note. In the end, she had been right about one thing. Yue Juntian was a heartless and fickle man. Her funeral was hastily and carelessly arranged, and the lord of the manor didn't deign to appear. The lavish costume she died in was swapped for white silk mourning robes, and her dreams of extravagance became a cold and shameful gravestone. In her suicide note, Madame Xie had written fanatically about her son, the heir to Yue Manor, Yeh-shoo-eh, proclaiming he would certainly replace Yue Juntian as head of the family. Yue Juntian knew these were the ramblings of a madwoman, yet he became irked by Jiang Yexue's existence, and his attitude influenced the rest of the Yue clan. In the blink of an eye, what was previously a faint aloofness turned into outright scorn. That lunatic son! What ambition those two had! Jiang Yexue was in no mood to confront them as he mourned his mother. He'd always been grateful in bearing and well-read in classics, and was thus a gentleman unwilling to meet his detractors at their level. He never complained about what he endured, nor did he speak up when others said he and Madame Xie were cast from the same mold. What could he possibly say? Could he tell them he'd stopped his mother from poisoning his infant brother? No matter how vicious and cruel she'd been, she'd loved Jiang Yexue in her way. Now that she was dead, how could he bear to heap another crime upon the lid of her coffin? He let it be and swallowed all of the suffering in silence. But Madame Xie's curse was like a white banner fluttering unceasingly before his eyes. Sooner or later, everything that should have come to you will go to him. You'll regret it. You'll end up just like me. You have no idea how a noble clan works. Many times, he startled awake in the dead of night, brow damp with sweat. When he looked outside in panic, he'd always see Murong Chuyi intent on his work, adjusting wooden mechanisms beneath the light of the lamp. Jiang Yexue would lie back down, panting. Thankfully, Murong Chuyi at least still believed him. He didn't think Jiang Yexue coveted power and hated Yue Chengqing in secret. He could still stay in Murong Chuyi's courtyard, and when he woke, he could still see the one he loved beside him. Because of this, Jiang Yexue didn't harbor much resentment toward Yue Chengqing. After the boy learned to speak, when he reached out and babbled, "Gaga, gaga," as he drooled, Jiang Yexue realized he found this tiny child truly adorable. This little brother was worthy of protection and care. He didn't want Yue Chengqing to experience the same suffering he had. By and by, Yue Chengqing grew up. When it came time for him to enter the academy, Yue Juntian gave him everything. He was the son of Murong, after all, and hence of royal blood. Seeing it was a chance to ingratiate himself with the emperor, Yue Juntian ensured Yue Chengqing was handed every possible opportunity in life, and even made excuses to take back some artificing tools he'd previously given to Jiang Yexue. Your little brother lost his mother young. His situation is so pitiable. As the elder brother, you need to provide for him. Your little brother needs these more than you do. You're an understanding person. Don't quarrel with him. You've read lots of famous scholarly works. You should know what it is to concede courteously. Several of the manor's more shameless servants mocked him, despite having no status of their own. Yexue Gongzi, a gentleman ought to know when to yield. In irritation, Song Shifu wanted to rebuke them, but Jiang Yexue stopped him, shaking his head. It doesn't matter. We shouldn't sink to their level. But as one thing after another was ripped from his hands, a gnawing hole opened in his heart. That hole yawned bigger and bigger, filled with a swirling melange of disappointment, fear, and resentment. One day, Yue Juntian again came to call on him. Yexue, you've studied with Chuyi so long. You surely learned all there is to learn. From now on, it's best to have Chun-ching stay with Chuyi instead. Jiang Yexue blinked. What? What I mean is, when a child is young, it's of utmost importance that he has a good teacher. You're a sensible boy. Spend today packing up to let your little brother move in. He, too, likes clinging to Chuyi. Ah, it's easy to see the two of you are brothers. You're so alike. Comprehension sank in through the shock, but Jiang Yexue didn't move. Yue Juntian was mildly surprised. He'd grown used to Jiang Yexue's unfailing acquiescence. His lack of reaction gave him pause. What's going on? Father, Jiang Yexue said tightly, narrowing his eyes. Have I not been sensible enough? Met with Yue Juntian's stunned silence, he pressed on. What more do I have left? Why don't you just kick me out of the house and be done with it? Wouldn't that be better? Chun-ching would have more space to play. Yue Juntian had never seen him talk back like this. Enraged, he slapped the table. Impudent! It's not that I'm impudent. It's that you're crossing a line. What exactly do you take me for? Yeh-shoo-eh, how dare you speak to me this way? Jiang Yexue got into a huge fight with Yue Juntian that day. Jiang Yexue was good-tempered and mannerly, but he wasn't a coward. Now that he was truly angry, he didn't back down, leaving Yue Juntian humiliated and breathless with fury. You little beast! He swore, jabbing a finger in Jiang Yexue's face. Your mother said you would take my place, and now I see your greed. Despicable! You wish me ill? You wish your brother ill! You're just like your mother! In the end, the entire manor got word of how father and son, who had long nursed dissatisfaction with one another, went from arguing to trading blows. But Jiang Yexue was young and had no one to lend him support. Yue Juntian quickly subdued him. The flogger lashed down in a vicious torrent of strikes, scarlet blood flying everywhere. When he heard the news, the young Yue Chun-ching dashed out. What he saw terrified him, and he pleaded on Jiang Yexue's behalf. Papa, don't hit him anymore. Don't hit Guga. What do you know? He's the same as his mother. His whip cracked toward Jiang Yexue's stubbornly upturned face. Stop it! A beam of light flashed past, and a talisman overflowing with spiritual energy snapped into a barrier in front of Jiang Yexue. Yue Juntian was caught off guard. His arm twinged with pain, and the whip fell from his numb fingers. He whirled in furious astonishment to find Murong Chuyi stepping through the door, his horsetail whisk in the crook of his elbow and a sigil at his fingertips, glaring cold daggers at him. Yue Juntian, haven't you done enough? You? Yue Juntian's lips were trembling. You're actually siding with this beast. Murong Chuyi helped Jiang Yexue to his feet, then turned and said in a tone low with warning, He is my nephew. If you touch so much as a hair on his head, I won't let you off easy. Thanks to Murong Chuyi's intervention, the fight hadn't escalated further. In the stillness of the night, two people sat on the steps beneath the eaves of the courtyard. Murong Chuyi helped Jiang Yexue bandage the cuts on his hands. The wounds there were deeper than the lashes from the whip. They were from Yue Juntian's holy weapon. What kind of father used a holy weapon on his own son in an argument? Murong Chuyi worked in silence, then asked a rare question. Does it still hurt? Jiang Yexue didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and dull. Before my mother died, she said in less than 20 years, everything I had would become Chun-ching's. He paused. But if I told you I'd never thought of fighting Chun-ching for the Yue clan, would you believe it? I would. Jiang Yexue didn't think he would answer so quickly, without the slightest hesitation. He hadn't wanted to cry, but upon hearing Murong Chuyi speak with such unwavering certainty, his sorrow and indignance overwhelmed him. He curled in on himself, forehead pressed to his knees, and sobbed in breathless silence. He said, I never wanted to fight for anything. I truly never wanted to be the master of Yue Manor. I don't have that kind of ambition. I've already given up everything I can. Why did he have to take the only thing I have left, the only thing I won't give up? Murong Chuyi sat with him. After a time, he sighed softly and patted Jiang Yexue on the shoulder. But Jiang Yexue's head was a mess. The feelings he'd suppressed for so many years had finally found a ready outlet. He had honestly lost control. When he looked up to see Murong Chuyi comforting him, that hidden desire surged out like an uncontrollable tide. Even Jiang Yexue couldn't have said what he was thinking, or perhaps in that moment, he wasn't thinking at all. By the time he returned to his senses, he had already pressed close to Murong Chuyi and leaned down to kiss him on the mouth. It was such a light touch, like a dragonfly skimming water, but he felt as if fireworks were going off in his head. Both of their minds seemed to have suddenly gone blank. Eventually, Murong Chuyi roused himself, surfacing out of his shock. He shoved Jiang Yexue away as if he'd been stung by a scorpion and jumped to his feet, his beautiful face drained of color. "What are you doing?" At the expression on Murong Chuyi's face, Jiang Yexue's spinning head cleared in a flash. He panicked, his face heating as he stammered. "Chuyi, Before Jiang Yexue could stand up and explain, Murong Chuyi skittered backward, staring at him in outrage and disbelief. "Xiaoju, I'm sorry. I was just... Being called Xiaoju seemed to deal Murong Chuyi an even deeper wound. The world wobbled before his eyes. He pursed his lips a few times, wanting to speak, but overwhelmed by the absurdity of the situation. He had grown used to treating Jiang Yexue as a junior. He could never have imagined Jiang Yexue felt this way about him. A shiver ran down his spine as icy sweat drenched his back. But he'd just been kissed against his will. No matter how he rebuked Jiang Yexue, it was a pathetic position to be in. Murong Chuyi's face went white and green in turn. Before Jiang Yexue could speak again, he turned with a sweep of his sleeves and left. Chapter 173. A gentleman no longer. Afterward, Murong Chuyi distanced himself from Jiang Yexue. Jiang Yexue tried to apologize and explain himself again and again, but Murong Chuyi, having received too great a shock, avoided him and refused to be alone with him. It was little wonder. Murong Chuyi had never had the slightest indecent thought about him, and though they weren't related by blood, he had only seen Jiang Yexue as his nephew. Any uncle would be scared off by this. After a few failed attempts to reconnect, Jiang Yexue understood that Murong Chuyi was no longer willing to see him. He lived by the principles of virtue. Even if he couldn't control what he felt, he understood that it was impossible for there to be anything between him and Murong Chuyi. That act of his had been thoughtless, born entirely of his turmoil. The first time he'd ever lost control in all those years with Murong Chuyi. He wanted Murong Chuyi to know he had never dared to hope for more, but Murong Chuyi gave him no chance to make amends. After his relationship with his young uncle soured, Jiang Yexue was left wholly alone in the Yue clan. No matter how virtuous he was, Jiang Yexue was still but a youth. Under those conditions, pain, dissatisfaction, grief, and bewilderment inevitably began to proliferate in his heart. But he had always known to restrain himself, and he did his best to dispel his own unhappiness, until late autumn of that year, when a group from Yue Manor traveled to the northern frontier to refine armor on the emperor's orders. Chun-ching was still young and only wanted to play. Despite a strict warning from his father not to stray out of sight, he often snuck away to explore the wilderness. He didn't care that the northern frontier was the border between Chonghua and the Liao Kingdom, a place with many hidden daggers. On one such day, Yue Chun-ching didn't return to their camp. Yue Chun-tian was frantic with fear that the Liao Kingdom had captured his son and ordered their whole party to search for him, Jiang Yexue and Murong Chuyi included. "Do you remember what happened back then?" Jiang Yexue asked. The glow of the pool in Huntian cast its bloody light over both his and Yue Chun-ching's face. "You were so headstrong and willful back then because everyone coddled you. Blissfully ignorant, childishly conceited, doing whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. We checked all the most dangerous places on the northern frontier, but we couldn't find a trace of you." He tilted Yue Chun-ching's chin up and continued darkly. "In the end, I used one of my own devices to figure out where you'd ended up." Yue Chun-ching looked dazed. His gaze was vacant. It was unclear how many of Jiang Yexue's words he had heard. But Jiang Yexue didn't seem to care whether Yue Chun-ching was listening. These secrets had been trapped in his heart all these years, and now that he was finally giving them voice, he likely wouldn't have cared if Yue Chun-ching were deaf or blind or dead. I tracked you down, only to discover you'd made it past Chonghua's border barrier and into Liao Kingdom territory. You were in dire straits when I found you, much like you are right now. The king of Liao had been conducting transmogrification experiments at the border. There were large numbers of beasts infected with demonic Qi roaming the wilderness. You recklessly charged into their midst, got injured by one of those beasts, and fell unconscious in the grass. Okay, this ain't a footnote, but if anyone else was lost like me, transmogrification is the act of changing or altering something greatly, and often with grotesque or humorous effect. Okay. Jiang Yexue snorted. I was the first one on the scene. Everyone else was still searching. It was like we were the only two people left in the world. If I'd made a move then, you would have died. Everything you'd taken would have come back to me. Those tools and trinkets, Murong Chuyi, even the Yue clan itself. Everything could have been mine. He raised a hand, stroking Yue Chun-ching's throat. He pressed close. The question he asked was addressed to Chun-ching, but he said it as though he were asking himself. Yue Chun-ching, Jiang Yexue whispered. Why was I so stupid? Why didn't I kill you? Huntian Cave was still and silent. The only sound was Jiang Yexue's voice. Everyone else was powerless before him. Whether it was Mo Xi paralyzed by the poison, Murong Chuyi rendered unconscious by his injuries, or little Lanar, made into a puppet long ago, each a testimony to this man's victory against great odds. Jiang Yexue's face twisted. When he stared in Yue Chun-ching's eyes, the man in the reflection was a far cry from that perfect gentleman he'd once been. It didn't matter. He had long since given up on the person he used to be. That silly Guga of yours, he murmured. Truly, he was so stupid. You'd already ruined his life, but he remembered that you were Murong Chuyi's nephew and his own brother by blood. He didn't just fail to kill you. He rushed to save you. He saw that you were in grave danger, and as soon as he sent the signal flare, he purified the demonic Qi within you without a thought for whether he might be infected himself. He passed your spiritual energy, keeping you alive. Jiang Yexue looked up with a soft chuckle. How ridiculous he was. How ridiculous I used to be. I kept you alive until Yue Duntian made it to the scene, but the demonic Qi infected me instead. But when that dear papa of ours saw you in such a state, all he cared about was bringing you back so your injuries could be treated. He didn't even notice me. Although, he closed his eyes, his tone unreadable. That was for the better. To stop you from succumbing to the demonic Qi, I brought it all into my own body. It was a risky choice. If the demonic Qi couldn't be fully dispelled, according to the laws of Chonghua, the infected person would be executed. It's really quite fortunate that when Yue Chuntian found us, he only had eyes for you, while I was next to nothing. Jiang Yexue barked out a derisive laugh. In his eyes, I'd always been the expendable son of a commoner. If I threatened his reputation or sullied his name, he would offer me up to the gallows without the slightest hesitation. My mother was absolutely correct. Yue Chuntian was callous and heartless. He could do or give up anything to ensure his own safety. Why would he hesitate? I couldn't tell anyone I'd been infected with demonic poison. After I returned to camp with the rest, I snuck back to my own quarters while everyone else fussed over you. Oh, Chun-ching, he sighed. You can't imagine the pain I suffered that night. His tone was nonchalant, but his eyes were so dark as to be depthless. Burned alive. An agony worse than death. All these descriptions would be an understatement. But oh, Jiang Yexue paused then, smiling slightly. My apologies. I forgot, you're the young heir of the Yue clan. You've been sheltered since you were little and never known the meaning of suffering. How could you have an understanding of the things I'm telling you? Later, I tried many methods to draw the poison out, but none worked. Chonghua had never seen this type of demonic poison before. I couldn't control it at all, and it spread unchecked within me. I felt trapped. I struggled. I felt my hatred and bitterness growing so vivid I barely recognized it myself. I fought it for a very long time. That bloody nightmare was a thing of the past. Jiang Yexue's struggle between humanity and demonhood had, by his own admission, been terribly painful, but now it was tossed out in a few words as an offhand comment. Jiang Yexue paused. Until one day, I felt that there was no need for it. He looked down again. Chun-ching, I became like this because I chose to save you. Who could I go to when I was in unbearable pain? Since I was a child, I yielded, I forgave, I conceded, only to end up this way. I'd had enough. I finally realized, so what if we're brothers? I hated you. I didn't want to be that idiot anymore. Morsi was paralyzed from head to toe, but he could hear everything Jiang Yexue said. He closed his eyes. He could almost see Jiang Yexue was a gentle and respectful youth, warm and good to everyone and everything. That image shattered. Huntian Cave echoed with Jiang Yexue's sinister mockery. My mother was right. You did take everything I had. If it weren't for you, all of it would have been mine. Why did I yield to you? Even your life, Chun-ching. The only reason you're alive today is because I showed you mercy twice over. As for your fourth uncle. At the mention of Murong Chuyi, the malice in Jiang Yexue's eyes was veiled by a sheen of desire. He ignored you, kept you at arm's length, berated you, refused to see you. Did you think it was because he disliked you? Jiang Yexue laughed harshly. What a joke! I'll tell you now. That's not true at all. You are the person he loves most in Chonghua because of your lofty, peerless mother. Because you're the son of Murong, he will protect you even at the cost of his own life. Chun-ching flinched and looked up through teary eyes. The reason he shunned you, he paused, is because of me, of course. Eyes slitted, Jiang Yexue continued lazily. After I decided to stop fighting, the demonic chi no longer caused me pain. Instead, it became something I could control. That's when I discovered there were many, many ways to make use of that demonic chi. The most compelling was to infect someone else with it. It would then keep them from getting close to anyone but me. Chun-ching's tear-sodden lashes fluttered, a delirious fury surging in his chest. His expression was still slack, but shock and anger gave his empty eyes renewed focus. You controlled him, he muttered. No, I've never controlled him, Jiang Yexue replied lightly. The demonic chi was impure. It wasn't powerful enough for that. But every month at the new moon, he would feel a burning agony only by drinking blood from my neck or by taking the highest quality heart balm. He could obtain relief. Unfortunately, he often decided he'd rather meditate alone through the new moon instead of coming to find me. Only when the heart balm failed to relieve his pain would he be forced to seek me out in desperation. He turned to glance at Morsi. Shizun is usually so sharp, he said with a smile. You've probably already realized that when you came to the academy that night, this was why my room was in disarray, with blood all over my quilts. He came to me because the pain was more than he could bear. That night, he lost control of himself completely and tore the room apart. I fed him blood and heart balm. Then I drew him into my arms and lay down in my bed. I knew I was right. He was there. Jiang Yexue! Chun-ching cut him off with a furious howl. You dare to coerce him like this! I'll kill you! I'll kill you! Jiang Yexue bound Chun-ching in place with the mechanisms on the wheelchair. What are you shouting about? He remarked conversationally. I would never coerce Chuyi. He was in awful pain, calling me all sorts of names. I could have disgraced him then, but I never did. That day, I only fed him my blood as usual, then lay with him in bed so his weakened body could recover. I certainly have no interest in rape. Instead of forcing him, I'd rather see him slowly lose his mind. I'd rather watch him dragged closer and closer to the brink every time the poison took effect. I'd rather him kneel before me of his own accord and beg me to take him. That's what I want to see. Chun-ching was on the verge of another breakdown. Jiang Yexue took in his horrified expression, and his delight grew. This wish of mine has been the same since before the demonic tea infected me. I only desired him to say he wants me of his own free will. I wouldn't touch him if he didn't say it. But, of course, I had to keep him near me. No one else could be allowed to look or get close to him. To this end, I cast a black magic spell. If he grew too close to anyone, the poison in him would transfer to them. I forbade him from speaking of this. If he did, he'd lose his mind and be reduced to a beast of lust whose sole desire was to submit to me. Jiang Yexue sneered. So you see, if I couldn't have him, at least there would be no other annoyances around him. I was willing to wait 10 years, 20 years. I could let him resist forever, never bending to my will. But I would never let other people vie for his affection, especially not you. You're insane, Chun-ching cried. So, Jiang Yexue replied calmly, I grew sick long ago of being a gentleman, and there's nothing wrong with being insane. There's no need to be so dramatic. There are plenty of hair-raising truths in this world. For instance, did you know that His Imperial Majesty has known for ages that I've hurt people with demonic qi, and even wholeheartedly supported me in doing so? Of course, for experiments, right? Chapter 174. Imperial Promises Are Most Unfathomable. His Imperial Majesty? Jiang Yexue had made this revelation without any particular emotion, but the words fell like a boulder into the sea, sending up thunderous waves. How could that be? Jiang Yexue sputtered, terrified. Moixi wasn't as naive as Chun-ching, but it was precisely because of this that a penetrating cold enveloped him. The emperor's face was too often shadowed within the depths of his fur hood, pale as bone, mouth habitually curved in that faint, enigmatic smile. There was at times a semblance of kindliness within his eyes, but he seemed to be a man of thousands of masks. His earnestness looked so real, as did his heroics, his hatred, his devastation and sorrow. Moixi had seen many of his faces. The emperor's emotions were painted as flawlessly as any actor's stage makeup. Moixi had never known for sure whose face represented the emperor's true self, or which emotions were his real feelings. Although the revelation that the emperor supported Jiang Yexue's use of demonic magic sent a shiver down Moixi's spine, he found that he wasn't the slightest bit surprised. Chonghua's emperor was a madman. This he'd known for a very long time. Eyes on Chenqing, Jiang Yexue continued. Each day I watched you as you grew up, watched as you began to cling incessantly to Chuyi. Even when he rebuffed you, you were undeterred. You were like a slug, I thought, a slimy little pest. Since you were little, anything you took a fancy to was something I would lose. I despised you more and more as time went on. Jiang Yexue paused, his narrow eyes flashing. Eventually, my patience ran out. I decided to cast a black magic spell on you. Chun-ching flinched in alarm. Don't act so shocked. Honestly, I would have liked to kill you outright, but Chuyi would inevitably be upset if you died. Jiang Yexue mused. I cherished him, so I let you keep your stupid life. But I would curse you, turn you into a mindless idiot, and stop you from tagging along after Chuyi. And I was so close to succeeding. The spell made it into your heart. Another 2 hours, and you would have been beyond saving. His expression darkened. Unfortunately, that day, a guest stopped by the manor at precisely the wrong time. He happened to notice the strange state you were in, and like the busybody he was, he brought you to Shennong Terrace for treatment. Who was it? Asked Chun-ching. Who else? Jiang Yexue's lip curled in disgust. Of course it was my dear friend, that faithful hero who still struggles to accept his fate even after being stained to the core by black magic tea. Our very own General Goo. Oh, shit. Morsi's heart skipped a beat. At this point, Jiang Yexue turned his attention to Morsi, who could neither move nor speak. Truly, I loathed him so much, he hissed. After that, the more he wished to keep someone safe, the more I yearned to hurt them. The more he cared for something, the more I wished to destroy it. Shizun, did you think I didn't know what you would see after I repaired those jade scrolls? Did you think I fixed them because I wanted to help you? Jiang Yexue scoffed. I said, oh, I knew it! Ah! Jiang Yexue scoffed. I merely wanted you to suffer, to push Goo Mahng deeper into the mire of black magic. Who asked him to ruin my plans and destroy my success? He almost exposed my plot right under the late Emperor's nose. Why shouldn't I hate him? Morsi stared, unable to say a word. It was him. He meddled and sent Yue-Chun-ching to Shennong Terrace. He let the healers discover the black magic energy inside Yue-Chun-ching, then reported this news to the throne. Jiang Yexue clicked his tongue. It was a close call. If the late emperor found out I was cultivating black magic curses, my death would have been assured. Fortunately, the late emperor wasn't in the capital. He, Yue Juntian, and all the other nobles had gone to the soul-calling abyss for the memorial ceremony, so the case landed in the hands of the crown prince at the time, that is to say, his Imperial Majesty. Jiang Yexue paused. I must say, our current emperor is a capable man. He quickly identified me and interrogated me with the draught of confession. Back then, I thought everything was over. Who could have known it was only the beginning? His eyes gleamed. Oh, God. Okay, let me not. Okay. When the Crown Prince found I could refine demonic medicines, not only did he not expose me, he took me under his wing and made me a promise. What promise? Yue-Chun-ching asked. He wanted me to use my demonic tea to conduct the experiments he needed, Jiang Yexue answered. In exchange, he hid my affliction from the court and promised me that, in due time, he would help me seize my rightful position and install me as the head of Yue clan. Met with Yue-Chun-ching's stunned silence, Jiang Yexue continued. For years, he and I studied black magic items and forbidden techniques. Jiang Yexue swept his sleeves back. I glimpsed many of the Emperor's darkest secrets. I knew Goo Mahng was a spy. I've known it for ages. I was the advisor behind nearly all of His Imperial Majesty's unspeakable schemes. Jiang Yexue turned to Morsi with an insincere smile. That's right. Here's another interesting fact. Do you know, the Zhenlong chess piece in Lu Zhanxing wasn't planted in him by the Liao Kingdom at all. He grinned in satisfaction, as if savoring Morsi's astonishment. It was my chess piece, and His Imperial Majesty's idea. Bruh. Oh my God. After a few moments of stillness, Morsi felt violent dread and disgust surge in his chest. As he listened until now, he'd felt mostly a vast disappointment, but as these words sank in, all the color drained from his face. He felt as though he might vomit. The sovereign's grand speech atop the golden terrace, his grieving words within Yun-Cue Hall. God. General Goo, you and your army are our most precious treasures. Do you think framing loyal subjects is something that brings us ease? Fireball, we don't have a heart of stone. It's only that sitting on high is like being held in a cage. When have we been able to feel at ease? In his memories, the Emperor's mournful and dignified face distorted and changed, becoming an evil demon's mien. Every word of it had been a lie. His Imperial Majesty had always planned to send someone to the Liao Kingdom to collect more black magic techniques, Jiang Yexue said mildly. At the same time, he felt Goo Mahng's influence should be excised as soon as possible. The poison in Lu Zhanxing, the defeat at Phoenix Cry Mountain, the pact on the Golden Terrace. His Imperial Majesty planned each step with care, precisely to strip Goo Mahng of his wings. to turn him into a puppet dancing on the emperor's strings. In the end, he succeeded. Jiang Yexue laughed coldly again, as if mocking Goo Mahng for his naivety, yet at the same time ridiculing himself. Who isn't a pawn on His Imperial Majesty's board? I'm no exception. I just saw through it, that's all. And that fiancé of mine, Qin Mujin, she'd been less than pleased at the prospect of marrying the son of a concubine without rank or status. After His Imperial Majesty took me under his wing, she gradually warmed to the idea. Later, after her family committed the major crime of counterfeiting money, she clung even more tightly to me, desperate and alone as she was. His features were etched with disdain. Of course I understood what was really going on. His Imperial Majesty didn't know of my feelings toward Murong Chuyi and thought I had some affection for Qin Mujin. He planted that woman to keep an eye on me. That much was clear to me. But I still wanted the Emperor to help me take back the Yue clan. It wouldn't do to offend him, so I played along. In spite of Yue Juntian's opposition, I persevered in marrying her. The faint curve of his mouth was crooked with mockery. This was the outcome His Imperial Majesty wanted. As long as my wife was someone he'd put in place, the Yue clan would remain under his thumb after I became its master. This was his plan all along. But unfortunately, Qin Mujin disappointed him. She died in our battle with the Liao kingdom. Everyone had said Jiang Yexue and his wife were deeply in love, yet it turned out to be nothing more than a facade. Their love was an act, their wedding a performance, and only her death brought him joy. Our emperor is suspicious by nature. Of course, he thought she died in battle because I've discovered his intentions and killed her off on purpose. Jiang Yexue paused, his features ugly with contempt and madness. It was truly hilarious. Could he really blame me for that woman's uselessness? Even so, His Imperial Majesty lost faith in me. Shortly after, Goo Mahng successfully infiltrated the Liao Kingdom's inner circle, becoming his most promising lead for black magic techniques. He began gradually to push me out of his clique, dragging his feet when it came time to give me the power over the Yue clan he'd promised. Jiang Yexue continued in a distant, forbidding tone. After I injured my legs in battle and became disabled, he treated me coldly. When I asked him when he would make good on his promise, he'd impatiently brush me off, like he had more important things to worry about. He sneered. It was lucky Yue Juntian taught me the meaning of callous and unfeeling so well. When bargaining with the tiger for its pelt, one of course prepares for all contingencies. I knew he was liable to go back on his word after getting what he wanted, and that he might silence me when I was no longer useful. So one day, I told him I'd set up more than 100 magical implements. If I died as a victim of one of his schemes, these implements would be triggered. Jiang Yexue licked his lips, ravenous as any predator, and revealed all of his dark and dirty secrets to the whole of Chonghua. Jiang Yexue chuckled, reveling in his triumph. He panicked, then, put on another show for me, trying to talk me out of it by promising the Yue clan would be mine. I just needed to wait a little longer. He even went personally to the Cultivation Academy to organize better quarters for me. His smile faded, leaving darkness behind. Too little, too late, he sneered. Why would I trust him again? The man on the throne was too scared to mess with me, and I wasn't on his side any longer. But we had each other's secrets in our grasp. Neither of us spoke of what we knew, but it was only to leave each other some measure of dignity. I understand what drives every one of his actions, including why he so badly wanted that wisp of demon blood beast's soul. Moishi felt another wave of disgust. The wisp of demon blood beast's soul? His ears pounded dully. He was bitterly disappointed. Goo Mahng had risked his life to bring back that remnant soul, all to stop the Liao kingdom from reawakening the beast. Could it be that the emperor wanted it for... Jiang Yexue anticipated his question. Of course, His Imperial Majesty didn't lie to you. If the Liao kingdom obtained the final wisp of demon blood beast's soul, war would break out immediately and Chonghua would be done for. He didn't seize that remnant for peace across the 9 provinces, though, but for his own eternal supremacy. His Imperial Majesty isn't content with mediocrity, and he doesn't fear battle. You two should have come up with some way to seal the soul yourselves instead of handing it over to him. His laugh was cutting. I'm afraid the war Goo Mahng hoped to prevent has in fact been expedited. You'll see. Soon, the Liao Kingdom will start a never-ending war with Chonghua over that wisp of soul. And our emperor, without a doubt, he'll meet their attacks with your blood and lives, and wage the war he's been yearning for. He'll achieve the goal he's always sought. Jiang Yexue's aura now was both crisply elegant and utterly terrifying. Once he acquired his new lackey Goo Mahng, there was no one to help me anymore, whether with healing my legs or seizing my position. Chun-ching's face was stained with tears and blood. Heal your legs, he mumbled in confusion before realization set in. So you took in little Lanar not to care for her, but because you wanted her spiritual core. Of course, Jiang Yexue readily agreed. Within her own body, her spiritual core only posed a risk to her. Now that I've taken it, her core provides me spiritual energy and powers the support I've inlaid into my legs. What's wrong with that? You turned her into a puppet just so you could heal. You plotted this whole disaster in Huntian Cave just to take the Yue clan. You killed so many people. In his rage, tears brimmed in Chun-ching's bloodshot eyes. Jiang Yexue, after this, who would ever acknowledge you? Who could ever stand the sight of you? Jiang Yexue chuckled. Are you a pig? Once we leave this cave, who will know it was I who killed all these people? I merely used my demonic energy to activate the seed I planted in Chuyi's heart. Even if they send 100 coroners, the result in their investigations will be the same. All of them died at Murong Chuyi's hand. Chun-ching cried out, hoarse with desperation. You want to ruin his reputation as well? You want him to take the blame for you? What reputation does he have to lose? Jiang Yexue replied blithely. As for the blame, there's no need for that. It's easy enough to threaten his Imperial Majesty and have Chuyi secreted out of the prison. Murong Chuyi will disappear from the world. I'll lock him up in the depths of Yue Manor. He'll belong to me, but his life will be in no danger. Don't worry. Even if I kill all of Yue Manor, I'll still spare him. A blade of brilliant light coalesced in Jiang Yexue's hand. He slowly raised the tip of the summoned sword to Chun-ching's throat. Chun-ching, I've given you 20 extra years on this earth. I've done my duty as your brother. Jiang Yexue smiled. Don't blame me beneath the 9 springs. He swung, the blade of his sword whistling downward. Okay, I swear I have like an evil streak going on right now because I'm like, haha, that would be a great place to stop. However, we are going to continue reading. Sorry, you guys. I think Jiang Yexue is getting into my brain. Chapter 175. If that year could have been eternal. In that instant, a blue-green blur flashed across Jiang Yexue's vision. He withdrew his blade and leapt back, his graceful brows drawn low in a rictus of fury. Ha! A bamboo warrior? Indeed, it was one of Murong Chuyi's bamboo warriors that had blocked his strike. The blue-green puppet wielded a scimitar and made wordless bellowing noises as it shielded Chun-ching. Jiang Yexue whirled in surprise, expecting Murong Chuyi had awoken, only to find the man still lying insensate in a puddle of his own blood. Chill realization washed over him. It was Chun-ching. Chun-ching had been faking his terror. When they'd fought the sword demon Li Qingtian so long ago, Chun-ching had summoned the protection of the bamboo warrior with a terrified shriek. Murong Chuyi was their master, but if he fell unconscious, they obeyed Chun-ching's order in his stead. While listening to Jiang Yexue talk, Chun-ching had stealthily summoned all of the bamboo warriors wandering aimlessly throughout the cave. Jiang Yexue swung his gaze back to Chun-ching. Despite his anguish, the vacant expression Chun-ching had previously worn was gone. Jiang Yexue gritted his teeth. Yue Chun-ching, I underestimated you. Yue Chun-ching coughed up a mouthful of blood, then looked up, panting. I already told you. I'm the head of the Yue clan now. How could I? Bloody spittle stained his teeth scarlet. How could I allow you to commit such evil deeds inside Huntian Cave? He cried out. All of you, strike! At his order, dozens of bamboo warriors swarmed out from the large boulder he'd gathered behind, charging toward Jiang Yexue like a great tide. Shrill howls burst from their wooden mouths as they struck to kill. While these formidable automatons embroiled Jiang Yexue in battle, Yue Chun-ching struggled free of the bindings on the wheelchair. Rising shakily to his feet, he stumbled over to Morsi. Shihajun, I'm sorry, he said. We've dragged you into these Yue clan matters. Morsi, paralyzed by demonic poison, could not respond. Yue Chun-ching's black eyes were wet. He sagged with exhaustion, but his eyes glimmered with steely resolve. But I will never let you and fourth uncle be wronged and wounded in vain. He turned and willed his wounded body toward the blood pool, step by painstaking step. A shudder rippled through Morsi. Was Yue Chun-ching planning to make blood sacrifice to the resentful spirits in exchange for Jiang Yexue's life? Jiang Yexue had also guessed Yue Chun-ching's goal. He swore, the saber in his hand suddenly blazing with golden light. With one violent swing, half of the bamboo warriors surging toward him like a massive wave were blown to smithereens. A golden chain swept around, flying straight at Yue Chun-ching's legs. But though Yue Chun-ching was weakened, he had fought with Morsi on the frontier for 2 years. He wasn't as feeble and useless as his brother assumed. Enduring the pain of his wounds, he dove to the side, dodging the chain. Yue Chun-ching was breathless, his eyes blurred with tears, his hatred mixed with countless other emotions. Jiang Yexue, I never liked arguing or fighting, and I really hate competing over things. If you wanted me to return what I'd taken from you, why didn't you just say so? Oh, now you gracefully want to step down. Jiang Yexue scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. Yue Chun-ching, all the power in the world is taken by force, even the emperor's throne. But did you have to kill so many people just for this? Can you really live with yourself if you stand on a mountain of corpses to reach the top of the Yue clan? Why not? Jiang Yexue burst into sinister laughter. I'm done struggling with my conscience like a fool. Never mind the people in Huntian Cave today. Even if my path were paved with the bodies of all the cultivators in the 9 provinces, I wouldn't feel the slightest twinge of discomfort. Yue Chun-ching looked at him through weary scarlet eyes, as though he could hardly bear to speak to him a moment longer. You will not succeed, he said weakly. You'll never get what you want, whether it's the Yue clan or fourth uncle. With that, he leapt toward the blood pool, ready to sacrifice his soul. In that flickering instant, a golden chain snaked tightly around Yue Chun-ching's waist. Yue Chun-ching jerked around. Little Lanar held the other end of the chain, looking at him with an expression of utmost apathy. When Jiang Yexue had missed his target seconds ago, he transferred the chain's spiritual energy to his puppet Lanar, who was standing behind Chun-ching. She had struck in the moment Yue Chun-ching's guard was down, immobilizing him. Seizing his chance, Jiang Yexue threw off the bamboo warriors besieging him. This elegant, refined man strolled out of the clouds of bamboo shards and smoke. Menace scrawled upon his features. He stepped up to Yue Chun-ching and grabbed him by the neck. Yue Chun-ching, you seem to be in a rush to die, and I'd like nothing more than to send you on your way. As Jiang Yexue tightened his grip, Yue Chun-ching flushed crimson, unable to get a word out. But there's no need for you to jump into the blood pool, he continued. Don't even think of using your soul to bargain with the monsters in there and ruining my plans. The unruly spiritual core he'd seized from little Lanar filled his body with a scintillating flame. And please don't call yourself the master of the Yue clan. That's all too laughable. The resentful spirits in Huntian Cave will never listen to you. You just damaged your own soul core like an idiot. You're an invalid. You'll never be able to become the head of the Yue clan as you are, and the next in line is me." He raised a hand and sent a beam of spiritual energy spearing toward Yue Chun-ching's heart. Yue Chun-ching vomited a mouthful of coppery blood. That hissing spiritual power had shattered his already fragile spiritual core to dust. Jiang Yexue's eyes glinted like those of a vulture ready to dine on a fresh kill. He seemed bent on seeing Yue Chun-ching as helpless and desperate as possible. After ruining his spiritual core, Jiang Yexue reached up and bellowed, "Hear and obey." His voice echoed through Huntian Cave, followed by innumerable screams. The resentful spirits and demons who had been directionless recognized their new master. They threw their heads back and opened their mouths, emitting earth-shaking howls. The blood pool roiled with crashing scarlet waves as the evil spirits that hadn't yet breached the water stirred and shrieked within. Jiang Yexue laughed, his smile a malevolent twist. Yue Chun-ching, do you understand now who the real master of the Yue clan is? He asked, dripping scorn. You'll never command them, because you aren't worthy. If he's not worthy, said a cold voice, then what about me? Jiang Yexue jumped in surprise, his face still a mask of mad arrogance. He whipped around in recognition. Chuyi? At some point, Moo-wrong Chuyi had regained consciousness. Pressing a hand over his wound, he struggled upright from that puddle of blood, a wretched sight. Although he had lost his usual bearing of an immortal in fluttering white, his unsettling air of calm hadn't lessened in the slightest. His face was bone white from blood loss, but his expression somehow seemed more peaceful than usual. Murong Chuyi looked at Jiang Yexue coolly. Yexue, would I be worthy? Both were born of concubines. Jiang Yexue's mother was Madame Xie, and Murong Chuyi's mother was Miss Chu. Yue Chun-ching was the true-born son, birthed to the first wife Murong Huang. When Yue Chun-ching lost the ability to control the resentful spirits of the blood pool, Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yexue had become equal. Murong Chuyi ignited the same blinding spiritual flame, its light setting his sharp phoenix eyes ablaze. He shouted, voice steady, "Hear and obey." Those resentful spirits surged restlessly again, and the demons that had just obeyed Jiang Yexue turned at the sound of Murong Chuyi's new order, pressing toward Jiang Yexue and little Lanar. A look of shock came over Jiang Yexue's face, but he held onto his composure. "Chuyi, you know you're no match for me," he said, narrowing his eyes. Murong Chuyi didn't answer, funneling all his spiritual energy into those blood spirits. "What are you playing at?" Jiang Yexue scoffed. "You're no match for me in spiritual energy. I can take control of your mind again, you—" "Rise," Murong Chuyi commanded sharply. The throng of resentful spirits threw themselves howling at Jiang Yexue, who swept back his sleeves and unleashed a torrent of his own spiritual energy to pull these evil spirits back under control. He heard Murong Chuyi laugh grimly. Yeh-shoo-eh, you're correct. You steal spiritual energy and destroy spiritual cores. You feed people poison and control their minds. Indeed, I'm no match for you. I'm weaker by far. Jiang Yexue watched him uncertainly. I grew so very tired of being your puppet, but I endured it to protect Yue Chun-ching. I persevered, no matter how loathsome I found it to be. He hesitated. To tell you the truth, I've had enough. I don't care about the Yue clan anymore. Hearing him capitulate, Jiang Yexue seemed to relax minutely. He took a step forward. Chuyi, if you don't interfere today, then on your behalf, I could still... But Murong Chuyi merely regarded him stonily. Jiang Yexue, there's no need to negotiate with me. Don't think you'll ever control me again. Jiang Yexue froze in place. Murong Chuyi's expression seemed to take on a hint of relief, like a sigh. It's been more than 20 years, he said softly. It's time for what's between us to come to an end. Realization dawned upon Jiang Yexue. Rushing forward, he cried out in panic, Chuyi! But it was too late. There was only the sound of cloth ripping in wind. Jiang Yexue clutched empty air as the corner of Murong Chuyi's pale sleeves slipped through his fingertips. Please no, please no. Those blood-stained white robes fluttered down and away, plunging into the bubbling mass of the blood pool. It was deathly silent. For a moment, none of them, not Chun-ching, Jiang Yexue, or even Morsi, felt what they'd seen was real. Oh my God. Fuck you, Meatbun. Murong Chuyi had moved so decisively, as in everything he'd ever done. The instant he committed to something, he always acted without wasting breath on words. He would never draw out his farewells or explain anything to anyone. Or perhaps he knew Jiang Yexue could easily take control of his body again, so he wouldn't allow him any such chance. Murong Chuyi had always been merciless, even to himself. For one moment, Morsi thought he might see Murong Chuyi soar out of the pool on Jiaoshui, landing upon the shore like an immortal cast down to earth. As when he had attacked the sword demon Li Qingqian, looking thoroughly unconcerned, yet completely confident in his victory. But he didn't. The blood pool boiled, but only a massive scarlet wave swelled on its surface, coalescing into the distorted shapes of evil spirits screaming as they shot toward Jiang Yexue. Chun-ching finally found his voice. "Fourth uncle!" he screamed, voice breaking. "Don't!" As for Jiang Yexue, he stood rooted to the spot, his eyes wide, his face distorted with rage. He lifted a hand. He could have stopped the ghost's attack at that moment, but the image of Murong Chuyi swallowed by the blood pool still danced before his eyes. Murong Chuyi's last words still seemed to echo in his ears, as if in a dream. In his schemes, he'd prepared for everyone's death. He was willing to use anyone's life as a bargaining chip, but he'd never accounted for Murong Chuyi's. He stood rooted to the spot without fully knowing why. Before he could question himself, before he could name what he was feeling, the blood pool's ferocious wave crashed down upon him without mercy. All he saw was drenched in scarlet. "Do you?" Jiang Yexue murmured senselessly, his voice quavering. "Do you really hate me so much?" No one answered. The crimson filling his vision was not unlike the old plum tree from many years ago, blooming a splendid red against the whitewashed wall. Back then, he had been young and righteous, unsullied and innocent. He'd walked over, umbrella held aloft, toward that youth's back. Smiling, he'd asked gently, "Which family do you belong to? What brings you out here without an umbrella in such heavy snow?" When Murong Chuyi turned, his eyes held neither hatred nor the disappointment and sorrow that came later. He only regarded him quietly. But this recollection differed from their first meeting. Dazed, he saw Murong Chuyi smile back at him. Against the backdrop of falling snow and plum blossoms, that youth said to him, "Nice to meet you. My name is Murong Chuyi." An ache pierced Jiang Yexue's heart, the pain of 2 decades stabbing through his chest. In the first half of his life, he lived strictly by the principles of morality. The world hadn't been fair to him, but Murong Chuyi, at least, had trusted and defended him. In the second half, he'd stained his hands with blood and come up with 1,000 plots and schemes. Just as he stood to reclaim his power, he found the same man standing before him, blocking his way. Murong Chuyi had once protected him. When everyone distanced themselves from him, when all his old friends avoided him, it was Murong Chuyi who gave him a place to stay. He gave him recognition, encouragement, and a home. Perhaps Murong Chuyi didn't truly hate him. Rather, the Jiang Yexue whom Murong Chuyi respected had died by his own hand the moment he had stumbled down that demonic path. In his last moments, he heard Chun-ching's heart-rending sobs and an agonized howl. "Fourth uncle!" "He's your fourth uncle?" Jiang Yexue thought. "At the beginning of this story, he belonged to me alone. If only time had stopped for us in that year, on that day, beneath that old plum blossom tree. How nice that would have been." "Fourth uncle! Fourth uncle! The blood tide retreated, taken by broken bamboo warriors with it, along with the resentful spirits that had leapt out of the pool. The flood of evil spirits had devoured Jiang Yexue. Little Lanar lay crumpled on the ground, unconscious. Chun-ching had fallen to his knees, crawling pathetically toward the pool. His face was a wash of tears, and he was sobbing piteously. Fourth uncle! No, no, don't go. He cried incoherently. I'll never get angry with you again, he wailed. Please. I'm begging. As if answering his plea, a beam of gentle white light glowed to life within the abyssal pool. Chun-ching's head snapped up, his pupils contracting to pinpricks. He trembled all over, his lips white and bloodless. He was so harrowed, and yet so hopeful, trailing blood over the ground as he dragged himself to the edge of the pool. Fourth uncle. It was indeed Moo-wrong Chuyi, floating out of the blood pool. He had offered up his souls and was running out of spiritual energy and time. His pristine white figure turned insubstantial as they watched. Just as before, when Chun-ching had gotten into trouble and his uncle had swooped in to save him, Moo-wrong Chuyi's silk ribbons fluttered and his sleeves billowed. He was haloed by Zhao Xue's glow as he alighted like an immortal coming to earth. Moo-wrong Chuyi had always come to his rescue with an air of great impatience. He never looked directly at Chun-ching, and hardly deigned to talk with him. But now, Moo-wrong Chuyi was freed of Jiang Yexue's black magic curse. He no longer had to worry that showing affection might affect someone with demonic qi. He could finally do what Chun-ching had always yearned he would. Look down with a soft smile, raise a softly glowing hand, and gently place it atop Chun-ching's head. Chun-ching wept in silence, his tears falling like rain. You've done very well, Chun-ching. Moo-wrong Chuyi's voice was light as smoke, echoing through the wreckage of Huntian Cave. Unfortunately, your fourth uncle never properly spent time with you, taught you, or cared for you. That's not true. That's not true. You treated me well. So well. I'm the one who let you down. It was me. Fourth uncle, don't go. Let me go instead. Let me... What are you talking about? Moo-wrong Chuyi extended 2 fingers and gently touched them to Chun-ching's forehead. You're young yet, with a long road ahead of you. This is the last time I can come to your rescue. In the future. Fuck. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. Fuck you, Meatbun. Oh my god. In the future, you must be diligent and work hard. Remember, you're not only Moo-wrong Huang's son. After a pause, he spoke in a gentle voice. You're also my nephew, Chun-ching. Moo-wrong Chuyi turned and approached Mo-xi. Placing his hand over Mo-xi's heart, he sent the last bit of energy from his soul to dispel that stubborn demonic poison. Mo-xi choked out a mouthful of blood as his limbs regained feeling. Moo-wrong, he rasped. Moo-wrong Chuyi shook his head. You haven't told Goo Mahng I'm his Gugga yet, have you? He asked softly. Mo-xi couldn't reply. Please don't ever tell him, Moo-wrong Chuyi said gently. I'm sorry, Shizun. He drew his hand away from Mo-xi's chest. His figure had paled almost to nothingness, a quickly fading mirage. Everyone's lives are ruled by fate. It seems Goo Mahng and I were never fated to be. I won't be able to honor our agreement for tomorrow. I ask you to tell him to take care. That last glow gradually faded. Only Moo-wrong Chuyi's voice remained in the cave, soft with a gentleness no one had ever heard. Please don't wait for me. Oh my god. Chapter 176. Murong Chuyi. Goo Mahng sat beside the window in the inn. He'd been awake some time now. Oh my god, When he saw Morsi had left a barrier, he knew he must have gone out to take care of something, so he wasn't anxious at all. He sat obediently at the window and waited for Morsi to return. After all the torment he had endured, his senses and emotions had become sluggish. It was rare now that he felt anything vividly. His joy, rage, sorrow, and delight had faded, as though rinsed with water. But as he watched the horizon pale like the white belly of a fish, he remembered that this dawn would mark the day his Guga had promised to meet him. That he soon... I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to read this with... Okay. That he would soon have a brother and a family, and a smile stole across his face. Propping his elbows on the windowsill, he gazed with anticipation at the rosy clouds as the morning sun peered over the edge of the world. After a moment of thoughtful hesitation, he stood and fetched the white robes Morsi had brought him. Given his clumsiness, he worried he might dirty these clean clothes, and he was afraid to wear them, though he liked them very much. But today, he was going to see his big brother, so things were different. When Morsi returned, the sky had not yet grown bright, caught on the very cusp of dawn. He pushed open the door and caught a glimpse of the man standing by the window, an upright and slender figure with a jade clasp in his hair, robes pristine as snow brushing the ground. His heart skipped a beat. In that dazzling instant, he wished everything that had transpired in Huintian Cave had been a dream, that the person leaning against the windowsill was Murong Chuyi, that Murong Chuyi had come as he said he would. But it wasn't so. Slowly, his vision cleared. The man who looked back at him from across the room was Goo Mahng in his new clothes, waiting quietly, docilely, eagerly for his brother to arrive. Morsi. Upon hearing that Morsi had come back, Goo Mahng was happy at first, but he became confused when he noticed the splotches of blood on Morsi's clothes. What happened to you? He walked to Morsi. Morsi didn't reply. He couldn't reply. Only 3 people had walked out of Huintian Cave. Little Anar had been sent to a healer's hall for emergency treatment, and both Morsi and Chun-ching could barely speak. Chun-ching had alternated between whimpers and sobs, then sat blankly by the blood pool. He was running through 100 interactions he'd had with Murong Chuyi in the past, thinking about how he'd taken Jiang Yexue at his word and pushed his lonely 4th uncle deeper into a freezing abyss. Murong Chuyi left no personal effects behind. The closest things were the dilapidated bamboo warriors scattered throughout Huintian Cave. All of them obeyed Chun-ching's command now. They had lost the master who carved them into being. But when Morsi accidentally touched one, it shrank to the size small enough to fit into his palm. It lay quietly on the ground, as if it had completed the last mission with which its master had entrusted it, and was now waiting for Morsi to bring it home. Morsi produced that little bamboo warrior and pressed it into Goo Mahng's palm. Goo Mahng blinked in astonishment, but he was not stupid, only slow to react. He had always been good at understanding people, even if the knowledge only brought him greater pain. The room was terrifyingly silent. After a while, Goo Mahng said quietly, "He won't be coming, will he?" A pause. "Does he not like me?" Morsi reached out and drew Goo Mahng into his arms. Shoving down his sorrow, he said, "No. He just has some personal business to take care of and had to leave. He likes you very much, which is why he had me bring this little bamboo figure to you. Once he sorts everything out, he'll come back. How long will it take?" "It might take a very long time." Goo Mahng was silent. At length, he asked softly, "Morsi, why are you crying?" Why was he crying? The upheaval in Huintian Cave had happened over the course of one short day and night, but it had upended over a decade's worth of events. Jiang Yexue's warmth and tenderness were false. His love for Qin Mujin was false. Murong Chuyi's heartlessness was false. Everything the emperor had said to him was false. It seemed Moshi had been living in a puzzle box of schemes. He treated everyone with sincerity, yet he was greeted in turn with mask after mask. He'd once thought everything he'd done for the nation was right, that grace and grievance were cleanly divided. But after this final upheaval, he understood once and for all that they'd all been no more than pawns on a chessboard. How ruthless had the current emperor been, that he plotted for Jiang Yexue to lead Lu Chun-ching astray, to sacrifice the lives of 70,000 soldiers, all to ensure that Goo Mahng had no choice but to obey him. Goo Mahng had lived for 5 years as a spy, enduring the weight of his bloody crimes entirely alone. For that remnant of demon blood beast soul, he'd even lost his human mind and given up his opportunity to meet his elder brother. They had sacrificed so much in hopes that the war would cease, that the 9 provinces would be at peace. But in the end, which of their accomplishments hadn't merely served to sharpen the emperor's blades? Moshi felt an endless, bone-deep exhaustion. After the catastrophe in Huntian Cave, Moshi couldn't stay and lean on with Goo Mahng to look for that reclusive grandmaster. News of the tragedy that had befallen the Yue clan spread like wildfire, blazing across Chonghua. The entire nation was in shock. Moshi and Goo Mahng helped Yue Chun-ching make the necessary arrangements and traveled with him as he brought the beer back to the capital. The funeral rites were an absurd pantomime. The Imperial family had to preserve their image. They wouldn't carelessly reveal Yue Juntian's repulsive deeds. No walls in the world, however, were solid enough to stop talk from spreading. Everyone soon knew the truth, and the mourning songs seemed profoundly ridiculous. Through the swaying white banners, beyond the dense crowd of mourners, Moshi gazed up at the distant emperor solemnly pouring wine on the memorial platform. His fingernails sank deep into his palms. What did this person consider his subjects, his soldiers, his citizens to be? The Yue clan's funeral procession was a quick affair. Yue Chun-ching had no heart for it, and more pressingly, the skirmishes between Chonghua and the Liao kingdom had grown frequent. As the emperor was performing the memorial ceremony, members of the Bureau of Military Affairs were waiting to report to him about the situation on the frontier. The scent of smoke was strong on the wind. Jiang Yexue was right. The conflict between Chonghua and the Liao kingdom hadn't ended because they'd seized the remnant of the demon blood beast's soul. Instead, it had only become more volatile. The funeral goers fidgeted anxiously. Even the handful of stubbornly optimistic nobles recognized that they stood on the cusp of an all-out war between Chonghua and Liao. I heard the Guosher of the Liao kingdom develop some new techniques he used in the battles on the frontier. It's an enchanted plague that can infect an entire city with demonic qi in a handful of days. Heavens above! What do we do now? I don't know either. I heard Sishu Terrace and Shangnon Terrace have been developing countermeasures, but I hope they can work faster. The Liao kingdom has been sending wave after wave of troops to the border. I'm afraid a true battle will be next. The speaker's complexion was gray with fright. If there's no way to defend against this demonic qi, what soldier would dare stand against them? It's the same as a death sentence. I'm not going to the front lines, no matter what. The crowd shuffled and whispered among themselves. With the Yue clan's pain laid out before them, these old nobles were quietly discussing how to save their own skins in the coming war. In the end, people would always be more preoccupied with their own worries than the tragedies of others. Yue Chun-ching had no interest in remaining at the burial grounds to accept these insincere expressions of grief, and instead returned to Yue Manor. After all the deaths, it was terrifyingly empty. He wandered through the corridors. Whenever his eye caught on something that reminded him of the past, his heart ached fiercely, and his shoulders crumpled inwardly, as though he were struggling to breathe. Each time, he had to sit down for a spell before he could continue walking. He was a young man, but overnight his joints seemed to have rusted over. Even striding through the halls of his home was now a jerky and laborious endeavor. When he reached the doors of Murong Chuyi's artificing workshop, he stared at it without seeing for a long time. This was one of the most difficult places to enter in all of Chonghua, requiring both secret techniques and mysterious incantations. But Yue Chun-ching seemed to have had an epiphany. Or perhaps it was merely a wholehearted conviction. He raised a hand and pressed it against the door. The little wooden guardian popped out from its hidden compartment with a creak. "Who goes there?" it asked. The voice was low and as melodious as the cracking of Kunlun jade. Murong Chuyi's voice. The sound seemed to stab Yue Chun-ching in the chest, the ache stopping up any possible answer. He knew nothing of any secret techniques or passwords. He slumped over, burying his face in his hands as he sobbed. "Fourth uncle." As his sobs turned into wails, that figurine watched him quietly. Yue Chun-ching curled into a ball outside the workshop as he cried. "Fourth uncle, I miss you." This was certainly not the correct incantation. Nevertheless, the tightly shut workshop doors emitted a muffled rumble, and the double doors opened outward with a groan. Yue Chun-ching watched in near disbelief, then slowly picked himself up and walked inside. The workshop was a mess. The master of this room was a busy man, and diagrams featuring every sort of mechanism and implement were pinned over the walls. Many were mere ideas that Murong Chuyi hadn't gotten the chance to realize. Yue Chun-ching looked through the drawings one by one. Murong Chuyi's reputation had been so poor that he was known as the ignorance of Chonghua's three poisons. Yet the items Murong Chuyi had locked himself into this artificing workshop to create were all things that could benefit others. There were wooden mechanisms that could carry water, magical implements that could ward off evil. More sketches were piled up on his desk. Murong Chuyi had lived under a curse that kept him at a distance from everyone. All the kindness he felt toward the world had been poured into these heaps and stacks of diagrams. He'd probably thought he'd live for a long time. Even if his solitude was hard to endure, at least he'd have many years to turn these ideas into reality. Yue Chun-ching rummaged through the items on the desk. There were wooden bearings, a few round nails, and some delicate bamboo warrior joints. Every time he picked up something, he looked at it carefully. When he thought about why Murong Chuyi had made these things, his heart ached fit to break. Greed, wrath, ignorance. Greed, wrath, ignorance. The most heartless artificer. Outside the confines of this room, people spoke only of his infamy, while hidden within was his concern for the people. The careful notes beneath each diagram made Yue Chun-ching's throat close up and his eyes mist over. At times, he had to spend a long time forcing down the pain in his heart before he could keep reading. He learned that this wooden mechanism was to help elderly people, that the tool was to prevent children. He even found a stack of talismans mimicking the Yue clan's talisman of indestructibility. That's what I was thinking about. Gripping that stack of papers, he suddenly realized that when the sword demon Li Qingqian had wreaked havoc in Chonghua, and the poor commoners couldn't afford the Yue clan's protective spells, the one who silently gave out talismans hadn't been Jiang Yeh-shoo-eh at all. It'd been... Yue Chun-ching held those yellowed papers, feeling as if he'd been punched in the gut. He doubled over, dissolving into sobs of grief. It'd been his fourth uncle. He'd never been greed, wrath, or ignorance. He was virtue, mind, and wisdom. The gentlest, most tolerant person who endured everything and kept his conscience clear even when forced to desperate straits. That was his fourth uncle, Murong Chuyi. Fourth uncle? Fourth uncle? Yue Chun-ching sobbed as if shattered, shutting himself up in this little artificing room. The water clock dripped soundlessly away. The ink on the inkstone hadn't been washed clean, and the brush still lay askew next to the white paper, as if Murong Chuyi had rushed out just a moment ago to take care of something. The mechanisms and diagrams that filled this room, those unfeeling, inanimate objects, couldn't know their owner was never coming back. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop there. I was gonna read one more chapter, but like, I can't. Meatbun has thoroughly destroyed me again. Oh my god. Why did she not like me? What did I ever do to Meatbun for her to just so thoroughly just attack me like this? Oh my freaking god. Oh my god. I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin, y'all. I'm not gonna go through all of my notes. I'm just not. We'll be talking about all of this pretty soon anyway, but I just Jiang Yexue. I knew there was something wrong with this man, and I knew that he had something to do with everything that happened to Goo Mahng, and I began to doubt myself and say that, okay, maybe he has just done something horrible concerning his family. Only for my initial thought to be correct. I still believed that he was some kind of awful creature, but I doubted a portion of it. I just don't have any words right now. Honestly, like, I'm pretty fucked up. I'm hurt because I'm hurting for Chun-ching, of course, but I'm also hurting for Goo Mahng. And like, you know, I had thought, I can't remember if it was in my last video or a video before, when I had randomly mentioned, I was like, you know what I felt like maybe everything that Goo Mahng was writing down was an indication of what was said in the prologue of him writing their life and everything, and Moshi had forbidden it and anyone would be punished. And I said, what kind of position of authority does he have to punish people from reading a book, like to forbid them from reading a book? And I'm not even gonna lie, my brain said, well, I guess he's gonna have to be the emperor. And you know what? I should have said that out loud just so I could share it with you. I didn't, but now I'm really feeling like it's gonna have to be the emperor. And I don't know what's gonna happen, because I know he took the freaking stupid vow of calamity, but this emperor is not escaping. Moshi knows the truth. This emperor is not escaping. Not to mention that Jiang Yexue is dead. And Jiang Yexue had already said that he implemented the things all around the country that if he died, then, you know, the world would find out about the emperor's schemes and blah, 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 blah. So we'll see how that all works out. But I just... What did I do to deserve such hurt and pain? What did any of us do? What did us readers do to have Meatbun hurt us so thoroughly like this? All right. I guess I'll add an extra chapter on to tomorrow's reading. You all have, if you can, have a good day. I'm going to try and cheer myself back up. So I'll see you guys later. 我爱你们。